Sir, if we take a look at the portfolio, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I do not want to hear it. But sir, the stocks, they're down horribly. We can't keep doing this. Buy more. What? Sir, we've already lost so much money. If they keep falling, and they're gonna keep falling, the attacks haven't even really started yet, sir. We need to pull out. No, we need to double down. He's the strongest. Thank you to our $5 patrons, Red Wolf 4765, Midnight Gem Lord, and Sean. Another thank you to our $3 members, Connor Plays, and Red Wolf 4765. And a very big thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Uchiha and iDemoKami. And a very big thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. Now, we're on this breakdown, such discussion and review of chapter... Oh lord. Chapter 225 of Jujutsu Kaisen. Please everyone leave your thumbs on the chapter in the comment section down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also hit that little notification bell to miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also I do have a Patreon down below, each for as low as $1 a month to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. Also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now let's hop into the review. What's up guys, Punter here, and here we are to chapter 225 of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is known as the decisive battle in the uninhabited, demon-infested Shinjuku. And Okay, so a lot of things happen in this chapter, despite a lot of things not really happening in this chapter. You know what I'm saying? Like, in terms of, like, genuine plot progression, like, one attack really gets off. A whole bunch of things get answered, and we get a whole bunch of interesting information and clarification and quantification for some stuff, which is really, really good, but there's a big main event we gotta talk about. But we won't be talking about that for a minute, because even the back half of the chapter has a bunch of really interesting, really important stuff we need to talk about that's massively important for scaling, stuff like that, and may put some characters, in fact, on an even further fraud watch than I thought they were on, or just put some characters on fraud watch in general. So let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into it. So we open up, and we do get to see that everyone is, in fact, studying these screens. I have no idea where they got all these TV screens from. Like, did Mei buy them? Did Gojo buy them? Why stack them up like this? Like, couldn't y'all just all watch it on one, like, genuine big screen? Like, why y'all have to be all fancy like this? Like, I don't know. And, like, none of these TV screens look like high definition or anything like that. Like, these aren't, like, 1080p, HD, 4K looking TVs. These look like box TVs. And I know we're in, like, when does Jujutsu Kaisen take place? It takes place in the release year. Like, it's December 24th of the release year. Hold on, let me double check. 2017. That's 6 years before us. But, like, they had flat screen TVs in 2017. Like, they had much better TVs than box TVs. Like, why'd you set it up like this? Like, I don't know. This doesn't even seem like, say some of y'all need to go somewhere. Now y'all gotta, like, run around the TV to make sure you get together. Why don't you just all, like, sit on a really big couch? Like, I don't know. If you could afford all these different kind of TVs, you could have afforded 100-inch screen TV and a really big couch. At least in my opinion. I mean, it's a cool setup, don't get me wrong. Like, I get the meta reason for why it's done like this is because it simply looks cooler, right? Like, all these TVs stacked on top of one another, everyone's circled around watching the great big bad battle. Like, I get that. And narrative, or no, out of narrative, but in narrative, this makes absolutely no sense. However, obviously, these guys aren't just sitting here watching in silence. They're all theorizing. They're pretty much us, because they're all just as relevant in the fight of Gojo and Sukuna as we are, and are also simply watching and commentating on it. And we see that people are going over the fact that, yo, let me level with you real quick. Gojo's Limitless allows him to be completely untouchable. And we get a confirmation for something that was hinted at in the previous chapter, wasn't exactly confirmed. Sukuna is using domain amplification to neutralize his curse technique. So, Sukuna, verbatim, hand for hand, bar for bar, word for word, does have domain amplification. And that is, like, not surprising at all. Like, no offense to the disaster curses, but if you had to ask me who was a more complete sorcerer, as much as I gassed up Jogo in that one video, yeah, it makes absolute sense to me that Sukuna, King of Curses, would definitely have domain amplification. Though this does make me wonder, like, did he invent it? Or was it Kenny? I feel like it has to be Sukuna, right? But we don't know. Like, unfortunately, and I think JJK is just going to stay like this. I don't think we're going to get a flashback arc, as much as a lot of people think we are, especially considering, you know, JJK is trying to end this year. I really would like to know more about, like, 1,000 years past Sukuna. We know little to nothing about the guy. Like, we have multiple flashbacks of him now. We have his general appearance. We know what he liked to do with his time. You know, be worshipped and, I guess, take a bite out of things you shouldn't be taking a bite out of. Like, we know that. But, like, what was he? What was he like? Well, we know what he was like. once again, he liked to be worshipped and take a bite out of things. But like, just simply, what did he do? I'd love to see more of Sukuna's early history, because we know so little about it. Like, we know a lot about Gojo's early history, we know a lot about Itadori's, Megami's, like, a lot of the characters we know a lot about. But the two big bads, Kenjaku and Sukuna, are explicitly, even Arume, are very mysterious. And I think that's purposeful, so I don't think that we're ever really going to get any answers on that, but it'd be something I'd like to see. Like, if we were to ever get like a JJK prequel surrounding Kenjaku and Sukuna, I'd be perfectly down with that. Like, I'd actually kind of want to read that. We already have one JJK prequel, but like an actual like prequel in the Heian era would be super duper cool. But regardless of that, he is using domain amplification, and that does bring up the interesting point that if he didn't have it, he really would have to rely on 10 shadows, or else nothing's getting through. Like, we saw Dismantle. I agree with mostly on that. I think it literally did just bounce off, or Sukuna just missed, like Gojo dodged or whatever. It was just drawn a little bit weird. So with that being the case, interesting. Very, very interesting. I mean, it makes sense. Like, it's something that people have inverse, so it makes sense that Sukuna would have it. But the fact that he has to, essentially, unless he resorts to domain, as they talk about later on in the chapter, Sukuna really has no way to beat Gojo. Like at all, mainly because the infinity is just that strong, which makes sense, right? Like, even with how powerful Sukuna was hyped up to be, like, him breaking a literal paradox was never set up for him. But the fact that he kind of either A, needs domain, B, needs 10 shadows, and or C, all the above, no, I'm kidding, or domain amplification in order to get past Gojo is very, very interesting. Though, once again, we haven't seen him use a single one of the 10 shadows techniques yet. And I say yet because no, I don't believe the battle's over yet, but obviously we'll get more into that discussion later. And with that being the case, Choso actually recognizes it. Wait a second. Hold on. Domain amplification. And one thing I do like, I like how Choso's sitting next to Yuji, his little brother. You know, I like the little character details. I like what you're doing there. And I like how Hana is sitting next to Yuji, because she's pretty much, I think Yuji's the only person she actually knows now, except for Takaba. But the thing is, Takaba doesn't, like, I'm looking for him. At least in this one big group shot, Takaba's not here. Like maybe he's behind the TVs, and I'll double check as I go throughout the chapter. But strangely enough, like how Kashimo went missing for a couple chapters, Takaba's just not here. Like, is he? Yo, this thought just came to mind. Is he fighting? Is he fighting Kenjaku? Maybe that's why they didn't go send everybody to go jump Kenjaku, because Takaba's fighting Kenjaku. Because I think unless Kenny opens domain, which is what she could do, that could very much happen. But unless Kenny opens domain, I don't think he can actually beat Takaba. That would explain why he's missing. Like, they may have to send him off to go fight Kenjaku. Oh, that would actually be so hilarious. Kenjaku just getting mad, like, I knew I should have been more careful. I should have given you all powers. But hey, the comedian is a pretty good counter. Unless, the thing is though, it's just the domain, because domain shuts down techniques. So I think Takaba would end up getting GG'd, and Kenny would probably just open domain once he realizes Takaba's technique. But with that being the case, we do get to see that, yeah, Hana doesn't know anyone else here. So she's sitting next to Itadori. Because, yeah, everyone else is a stranger. She only knew Megami and Takaba alongside Itadori when they all met up before. So her sitting next to Itadori is nice. I like that. Little character bonding stuff. And slowly but surely, more and more evidence that either A, Nobara is just not going to be relevant to the plot anymore, or B, Gege is seriously playing the long game. Like, the long game. Like, I forget how long after Gojo got sealed, Nobara was, sealed out of the narrative, putting it nicely. But, like, I don't know. Has it been? I feel like it's been 3 years. I feel like it has been 3 years. I don't think it's been any shorter than that. So the fact that she still ain't back yet, I don't know, Nobara fans. I'm losing faith by the day. But hey, I'd be happy with y'all. I would be happy with y'all and be happy for y'all if Gege proves me wrong. However, with that being the case, in the recognition, the recognition of domain amplification, Yuta admits that they've actually seen the Mekamaru battle footage. And Yuta says, I saw something similar in Mekamaru-kun's footage. That special great cursed spirit used the same method in Shibuya to counter Limitless. And we see that Akari says, it does seem that Gojo-san's domain has been neutralized. But how? Notably, I am going to chalk that up to a translation thing. Because what? Like, what? Domain? I mean, maybe it's just like domain is in his, like, general supremacy. Like, his area, I suppose, of Limitless. I guess you could say this is domain, but like considering how important domains are and the fact that they go on to have the rest of the chapter be talking about domains, the fact that Akari uses domain here, I'm actually kind of interested to see what the official translation says there. I don't think it would use domain, because I wouldn't use domain in this case. I'd say it seems that Gojo-san's technique, or Limitless, or Infinity had been neutralized, not necessarily his domain, because that's going to be, I don't know, it was confusing to me when I first read it. But with that being the case, he's wondering how. And interesting thing, it seems like the whole idea of Gojo being neutralized by Sukuna's domain amplification is suggesting that he may not be able to do the same thing he did to Hanami and Jogo, because Sukuna's that strong. I wonder. We don't see him do it because he does the stupid thing. Like, I hate to realistically say it, but Gojo doing what he does at the end of this chapter is the dumbest thing he could do. Like, I'm sorry. I know. Here's the thing. It's not the dumbest. The dumbest thing he could do was stand there and turn off Infinity. But once again, we'll get to it. But I wholeheartedly think that was the dumbest thing he could have done in that moment. But regardless, we do get to see that Hikari's a little bit confused on, like, how the Infinity is being neutralized. Sure, it is, but like, how is domain amplification able to do that? And we get a rundown of domain amplification. Once again, I do feel like some of this chapter is a bit redundant. If you've been reading the manga, you know what domain amplification is. You know what domains are. You know simple domain. Like, you know all this stuff. You could have just had domain amplification and immediately peeped the domains, but a lot of this chapter is specifically build up for the end of the chapter. Like, you're getting a refresher on domains and stuff like that, and how they interact, and the mystery behind Gojo and Sukuna's domain. You're getting a lot of hype for that. So I understand, once again, the meta reasoning. I understand why Gege would do this, simply to like reestablish the, I guess, the hype. But like, who forgot about the hype of domains? Like, we literally got a domain not 10 chapters ago in Yorozu's. I almost completely forgot her name. Like, we know how domains work, Gege. Like, but sometimes I get it, right? Because it's the strongest domain versus the strongest domain, right? Like, so I understand it, but at the same time, bro, But Gege fills the back half of the chapter with other stuff that will like grab people like me's attention. So I get it. You know, sacrifices are sacrifices, and it's cool to see these characters interact. All right, like obviously these characters can't actually do anything. Like, think about it. Yuta, Hikari, Maki, and Liberated Yuji are all fodder. That's crazy to say. I can't just say they're all fodder. They're not fodder. But like, in comparison to Gojo and Sukuna, they are not doing anything. They are not. And for some reason or another, they are not running down Kenjaku, which is another fight that could be actively happening. But I'm going to go with the headcanon that, hey, they know that Kenny has to come to them in order to complete his win con, and thusly, Kenny will be tired after taking out every other sorcerer. Is that a bit of a morbid plan? Yeah, but it's also better that they do that instead of running up on fresh Kenny. And also, if Takaba really is fighting Kenny right now, because I'm scrolling through the whole chapter real quick, I still don't see Takaba anywhere within this chapter. We literally get a shot of everyone else here except for Takaba. So maybe he is just hiding behind that screen. But with that being the case, obviously a weakened Kenny or a fatigued Kenny is better to fight than a full power Kenny. And a lot of the people, hey, gotta make some sacrifices, you know what I'm saying, for the greater good. But with that being the case, we see Kusakabe explaining, it's a more refined version of a simple domain. By sheathing yourself in a domain without imbuing your curse technique, you allow your opponent's technique to flow into that empty space, thereby neutralizing it. And naturally, the main question is, okay, Kusakabe, you understand how it works, but can you do that? And they're like, I love how Kusakabe's real with it. He's like, don't be ridiculous. Of course I can. And like, I can't necessarily blame bro for that. Like, really think about it. This is a technique that's only been accessed by like special grade tier curses and above. And don't get me wrong, Kusakabe is a very high grade one, but like, he ain't like that. Though it's interesting that he can understand it. But then again, he is the creator of the new Shadow style, I'm pretty sure. So him understanding a concept that's very similar to Simple Domain does make sense. And we do see something interesting. We do see something very interesting. I know it's not gonna, I highly doubt it's gonna mean anything. But I like that Higuruma's like, I can get the gist of it. So, like, if Higuruma shows up with, like, for some reason, if somehow, like, a big final battle breaks out with Kenny, like, spawning 1,000 curses or whatever, it would be so metal if Higuruma pulled up with domain amplification and simple domain just by like hearing about it, because this is the same guy who went from like never had cursed energy in his life to being a grade 1 with a Shikigami that could open domain in like 2 weeks. So like bro is a prodigy, one of the biggest we've seen in the series. So I wouldn't be shocked if he pulled up with new tech. And we see that Angel, not Hana, but very specifically Angel, is like, The main drawback to domain amplification is that you cannot simultaneously use your own innate technique. And we see that Hana even like double downs and back this up. It's like, yes, even Sukuna is no exception to this rule. I gave Angel, I think maybe that was Hana speak, maybe that was Angel twice, I have no idea. But with that being the case, we see that Panda's like, wait. So you mean to tell me that Satoru Gojo is getting boxed on by Sukuna without using a curse technique? And to be fair, Panda, have you been watching the fight? Neither of them have well, okay. Gojo did blow his arm off, but I consider that a cheap shot. But still, like, Panda, the fight hasn't even really started, bro. Chill out. In any ways, we do get to see that the real thing here is that if only if Sukuna has some other way to deal with the Limitless other than domain amplification, Gojo will lose. Because essentially that's what everyone believes, right? Like, the only reason Gojo's hanging around in this fight is because of Infinity. And whenever Infinity gets shut down, it's because of domain amplification. And if Sukuna can somehow circumvent the major weakness of domain amplification, that one cannot use their innate technique, then Gojo's going to lose, right? Because his main defense and his main stat in this battle is the Infinity. And admittedly, I do disagree with that a little bit. Like, we got to realize Gojo, he can cook. He can definitely cook. And he has a bunch of other things that he can rely on to drag Sukuna about, either the telekinesis he's shown recently, or red, or blue, or just, even if it's only in 100% purple, smack him in the face with purple. Why not? Just smack him dead in the mouth. But with that being the case, we do get to see that me was wondering, like, okay. So why isn't Sukuna using domain expansion? Immediately following a domain expansion, your technique becomes unstable to use, right? So shouldn't he challenge Gojo-san to a domain battle first? And yes and no. Like, here's the thing, right? If I'm Sukuna, vibing, 20 fingers through eating me of the past, like just straight munching, and I'm battling Satoru Gojo, and like, admittedly, I doubt he knows that was a 200% purple. He probably just thought it was a cheap shot. But like, considering the fact that I ate, like, admittedly not ate, obviously the arm was gone, but I ate a 200% hollow purple and just grew it back, I have no reason to stress right now. Like, there's legit no reason to stress. Gojo hasn't proven anything to me. Like, I know this sounds crazy as coming from a Gojo hype beast, but like, Gojo hasn't proven anything too crazy. Sure, he's been throwing Sukuna around. He's been boxing up on him a little bit. He hit him with a 200% purple. But like, Sukuna hasn't been in any real danger. He hasn't started sweating. There's no real reason to open domain. Especially considering the type of character Sukuna is. Considering this is the last person that could probably give him a decent fight in the entire verse, I'd be dragging it out too. Like, legitimately. I'll just play around. I would literally, like, admittedly, the only way I would differ from Sukuna is that I would be spamming the 10 shadows. I'd just be trying to see what it could do. Like, is that wrong? I'd be purely trying to see what it could do. I'd be like, okay, so, how you like these rabbits? The size of cars. Go ahead, fight it. Oh, okay, that's neat. Hey, catch that elephant. Like, I would just be messing around. Obviously, I get why he isn't doing that, because if his 10 shadows get destroyed, then he can't summon them again. But even then, totality. I would honestly kind of want to see it. Like, if I'm Sukuna, I don't really care about the 10 shadows. They aren't like, I don't have any personal connection to them. They're beasts. They're weapons to be used. If I could just totality up to Maharaga, I would do that. I just throw out random stuff at Gojo while they're amped and just see what he does with them, because I'm just having fun. Like, legitimately, neither of these two seem pressed within this battle because the battle's barely started. So I get why me was wondering, like, hey, why not use domain expansion? Because the rational thing in this battle, if you really want to win, like, you're truly and honestly going for the dub, is to boop, round start domain. Like, there's no reason that either of these two should be doing anything than round starting domain. Gojo should have opened round start with domain, and Sukuna should have opened round start with domain if they were both actually trying to win. But the fact that they aren't doing that shows that their mentality is a little bit different. But I understand why Miwa, someone who's about the business, you know, strongest character in the verse, is like, yo, if I had to fight, I'm just going to open domain. But with that being the case, we see that Kirara is like, well, it's easy to say that, but depending on the outcome of the domain battle, the fight would be over. And Miwa's like, no lie. Ain't that kind of what we're looking for right now, though? Like, isn't that a good thing? And Kirama was like, oh, wait, that's true. Why isn't he doing that? And once again, I think that is purely just up to Sukuna's personality and mentality within the fight. There's no rush. I just have fun. Like, like, the only thing I'd be slightly worried about is Gojo's domain. Like I would be ready to reverse domain if Gojo opened his first. Like that's the only thing I'd be prepared for, because that thing is the only thing that I consider legitimately dangerous to Sukuna. Like especially before we saw him eat 200% purple, I would have said purple is dangerous to Sukuna too, because I thought that attack was way more powerful and only chunks Sukuna's arm and like some of his clothes. It's obviously not all that. But domain's a little bit scary, a little bit concerning. So that's the only thing I'd be watching out for. But other than that, sure, let Gojo have his fun. Let me have my fun, at least if I'm Sukuna. And with that being the case, we see that people are asking, hold on a second, doesn't the domain sure hit effect negate Satoru-chan's technique in the first place? And we see that Yuji's like, yeah, that's the thing. He told me that himself when we were inside a cursed spirit's domain. And a cursed spirit is way lesser than Gojo. Not Gojo, lesser than Sukuna. And I love how Jogo's just been forgotten. Like Yuji doesn't even remember his name. He's just, oh yeah, a cursed spirit. Just a dude. But then again, I actually don't think Yuji ever heard Jogo's name. He never actually encountered Jogo after that altercation. So it makes sense why he doesn't know it. But I love how Jogo's that irrelevant. He's that fodder. With that being the case, we always like, well, if that's the case, could it be that Sukuna doesn't think he could win in a domain battle against Gojo Satoru? Is he just afraid? And I love how Shoko just immediately comes in and debunks this. She's like, no. If that were the case, Gojo would already be using domain expansion. I find it hard to believe that Gojo wouldn't see that, especially with the 6 eyes and his less than kind personality. And that is true. I highly doubt that in any way, shape, or form Sukuna's unconfident in any way with this battle. Like, notably, even with me being a Gojo Satoru hype beast, I don't think that the gap is that large between him and Sukuna. Like, legitimately, Sukuna has no reason to be fearful right now. So it makes sense that he's not afraid, and that's why Gojo isn't just like, Ryoki. But with that being the case, we see that Choso's like, what if their domains don't actually, do the clashing thing? And everyone's like, huh? What do you mean? And Choso explains what I initially thought, because I also thought their domain wouldn't really do any clashing thing. I thought their domains would interact super weirdly. But Choso says, based on what Inumaki and Yuji said, I don't think Sukuna's domain expansion actually closes off a barrier. And Kusakabe is like, huh? Nani daishikashika no? And Kashimo, we're making... Okay, so the video's in the works. The video's literally in the works. I'm gonna have to put him on Fraud Watch. But here's the thing. I'm gonna have to put him on pseudo fraud watch, because he's not actually a fraud, but this is very much fat fraud activity. Because upon hearing this, Kashimo Hajime, the lightning beast, has to say, I can't believe that. No, not canon. I don't know what manga you're reading, Choso, but I'm still on JJK0, bro. There's never been a barrierless domain introduced like that, or an open barrier domain like that. No, it's wrong. It's false. I cannot believe it. And Kashimo, bro. Okay. Here's the thing, right? I know you're wondering, like, Pencil, what did you really want Kashimo to do? Run up and fight Sukuna on his own? Yes. If we're just gonna job character Sukuna, like, if we're really just gonna start jobbing characters like we did Ryu, job Kashimo. His whole purpose, his whole character, his whole introduction was centered around wanting to fight Sukuna. This whole character, period point blank, is about fighting Sukuna. His whole fight ended with him looking Akari dead in the face and telling him, "Ayo, bro, take me off the map. Drop me. Take the 5 points. I want you to do it, because I'm not using the curse technique, and I really don't feel like fighting no more, dog. I couldn't use my curse technique on Sukuna, so I ain't gonna use it on you. Just get me up out of here, bro. Go ahead." So the fact that this man, this beast, this lightning creature, is standing back here all fraudulently and just not engaging in battle actively hurts me. Now, here's the thing. This could be redeemed. He could hop into the battle at any point. Like, legitimately, I'm not sure well, maybe not. He can't teleport there. That's the only thing. I have no idea how he would hop into the battle, but he could hop into the battle. Maybe, some way, shape, or form. Maybe he could. But with that being the case, I don't know. I would have thought he'd be the opener to Gojo versus Sukuna, but he's just watching. And, like, that just hurts me, bro. I was so hyped for Kashimo to do something against Sukuna. Even if it wasn't much, I was hoping he'd at least get, like, a Yorozu-style fight. He can still lose. I don't expect Kashimo to come out and beat 20-finger Sukuna. I'll be completely honest with you. I didn't expect Kashimo to come out and beat 15-finger Sukuna. But at least fight him, dog. Don't just be standing... Like... I know the Panda fans out there are going to be like, why do you always hate on Panda? And I can't give you a real reason. I just don't like the character. It's just like his gimmick of funny mascot animal guy. I've just never been a fan of it. Even in other series that I do like, other series that have characters that I love, never been a fan of the funny mascot animal guy, especially when they're fodder. If they're strong, maybe. But even then, I usually don't like that either, because I feel like it's not as serious as it could be. So, like, Panda was in a catch-22. It's not Panda's fault, but essentially, the reason I'm even bringing up Panda is that you're reducing Kashimo to a Panda role. Like, a straight Panda role. Like, the straight up, when Kenjaku mentions in the previous chapters, like, oh, the heavy hitters, he doesn't even include Kashimo. Kashimo's been relegated to the same status as Panda, Miwa, Kusakabe, Ui. Like, legitimately, bro's just standing around and commentating after he had literally a top 5 fight in JJK. That kind of hurts me. Like, I want Kashimo to succeed, for him to thrive, for him to do better, bro. But he can't do better if he's sitting around watching the fight instead of actively engaging in it. And once again, logically, I understand why he would not want to run the ones with Sukuna. No one should want to run the ones with Sukuna, not even Gojo. It's just not safe. But the fact that his whole character was based around it, and now he's chilling here, vibing here, instead of, actively fighting the King Curses, kinda hurts me. I'm not sure, because once again, we don't know if the manga is actually ending this year. Gege said it, and we still do have, 6 months for the rest of the year, and admittedly, there are going to be breaks. There's going to be breaks. There's no doubt about that. Mandatory and non-mandatory, there will be breaks. So realistically, I say we have 5 months left. Let's say there's just a month worth of breaks left in the rest of the year. And 5 months, 4 chapters, 20 chapters. So that a lot can still happen in 20 chapters, especially at the pace that the Sukuna versus Gojo battle is going and how long battles in JJK have been up to this point. Yeah, it's entirely possible that Kashimo can still show up and show out. But at least right now, he's looking a teeny, tiny, massively fraudulent. Like, straight up, looking quite fraudulent. However, we do get to see Hikari, one of the guys with one of the best domains in the series. At least in the original translation, it's explained that his domain is really good in tug-of-war battles because of how it works. So, a really good domain user is that's insane. And we finally get deconfirmation. I'm not sure why people believed this, but it was one of the biggest things in the 15 finger versus Yuta debate. But a lot of people just assumed that Yuta had a barrierless domain. I have no idea where y'all got that assumption from, because it literally stated in the Sendai fight that the 3-way clash of their barriers is what caused the thing to collapse. But, I let y'all rock. Even Yuta finds that absolutely absurd, the idea of a domain without a closed barrier. So, there you go. Yuta does not have one. Don't know why people thought he did, but I'm happy to have the deconfirmation. Just explicitly stated. If you still want to huff copium, I don't know. I have no idea what copium you can huff at this point, Yuta fans. But I've seen y'all be down and desperate. So do what you will. I say y'all. I'm not a Yuta fan myself. I still need to start the pro Yuta agenda. Don't worry. It's in the oven right now. We're gonna start cooking the pro Yuta agenda soon enough. But still, we're hyping him just a bit too much. And we see that Miwa's a little bit shocked. She's like, "Oh, is it that crazy?" And I know Miwa's new to Jujutsu, but does that even sound right? Does an open barrier domain even sound correct? And she's a user of simple domains, so she should know how important domains are and how they function and stuff like that. So the fact that she is caught off guard here feels kind of weird, kind of out of character. I get it. She's one of, if not next to Itadori, the most inexperienced here in terms of Jujutsu. But the fact that she's the one that needs to do this, once again, it feels have you ever felt, how do I put this? Have you ever felt the author reaching into the narrative and making characters say things or do things that they wouldn't say or do normally? That's how this feels. I feel Gege reaching through Miwa, sticking his hand in the back of her head and kind of puppeteering her mouth. Because she should know better. The idea of an open barrier domain is something that should just be crazy to anyone who knows anything about Jujutsu. It shouldn't be surprising to her. If anything, But there's no, that's the thing. I get why Miwa is, because there's no one else here less experienced than her, except for maybe Ui Ui. But Ui Ui seemed to be raised in Jujutsu, so I can't even say him. But with that being the case, Kusakabe does a very good example. He says, hey, Miwa, toss me that water. I have no idea why I'm giving Kusakabe this kind of accent, because he's Japanese. But I feel like it kind of fits him, so I'm going to keep doing it. Hey, Miwa, toss me that water.
Oh, okay, here you go.
What are you doing?
Huh? Didn't you ask me to toss it to you?
I said, give me the water, not the bottle. I have horrible with accents. I don't know why I even bother doing it. But still, with that being the case, we see that Miwa, in response to just being asked for the water, just throws the water on his face. And he immediately gets angry. But Mei does come in and be like, hey, expanding a domain without closing a barrier is, in fact, just like that. Like, being able to throw the water without the bottle. With no container, can water accumulate? Can you paint on empty air without a canvas? With no stem, roots, or leaves, can a flower blossom from a seed? It is truly impressive. Like, it is cool. It is very, very neat, essentially using just air instead of opening a separate space. But with that being the case, even Maki's like, it's like using software without any hardware. At this rate, it's completely... Oh, wait, that's not Maki, though. I think it's still Mei. At any rate, it's completely impossible. And we see that Maki, who did experience something similar to a open barrier domain, is like, well, Megami's incomplete domain wasn't enclosed within a barrier. And Kusakabe was like, hey, I heard about that before the grade promotion assessment. Still, to do that, he needed buildings or existing barriers to enclose his domain. That's small potatoes compared to what's going on now. During Toshikamo, or I suppose as he's known now, Kenjaku, he managed to pull it off. And everyone's shocked at that too, but Choso does bring up the Carfax that like, hey yo, we had planned for Tsukumo to counter his domain expansion with a symbol domain, while Tengen dismantled it from the outside. The symbol domain was torn apart in the blink of an eye, but she had expanded her domain. And we see that Mei comes in as like, it wouldn't have been a true domain battle. In that circumstance, you need to also take into account who the barrier's exterior belonged to. Though perhaps if she had expanded her own domain, there may have been a battle for Yuki-san's sure hit effect. But what exactly would clash? And that's the big thing. That's what I was wondering before this chapter, obviously. In a contest between a barrier domain and a no barrier domain, what is exactly clashing? Because I thought it was the barrier that enforced the sure hit technique. That's why Hollow Wicker Basket and Simple Domain work, because they ignore the effects of the barrier, and thusly the sure hit technique can't register. But when open barrier domains don't rely on the barrier for the sure hit technique, then what would clash? Would a domain even matter? Like, I don't know. That's the weird thing with the idea of it, like, existing yet not existing. I thought it would kind of be like a Megami's domain. Like, sure, say you were to have a clash between a closed domain and an open barrier domain. What would happen is the open domain would simply limit itself or be forced to be limited to the separate space of the closed barrier domain. Because at least how domains were explained to us is that they're like little miniature pocket dimensions where users of their respective domain get a technique buff because they're essentially within their own home court, their own home territory. Like, you know how in Bakugan, completely random, but one of my favorite games of all time is Bakugan Battle Brawlers for the DS. So I always go back to this. But like, you know how you could get like a gate card advantage if it was your gate card. So like, say you played Leonidas, or if you were just like me, for real, Omega Leonidas, and lay down the Omega Leonidas gate card, you would get that extra 200 beefy buff in the bonus effect of the card because it's your domain. I thought it'd be the same thing with an open domain versus a closed domain, where you could still do battle, like your domain would still be active within the closed barrier if you had an open barriered one, but like it would just still be active, because without the barriers clashing, without the thing that ensures the sure hit technique clashing, I thought both would just coexist and it becomes a battle of like who can last longer against the other sure hit effect. So I thought, here's how I pictured the battle going if a domain battle were to occur between the two. I thought what would happen, let's take Gojo's and Sukuna specifically. I thought Gojo's Infinity, the Infinite Void, would hit Sukuna, and he would start to get overloaded with mental energy. And at the same time, I thought Gojo would also be getting torn apart by Malevolent Shrine. And it really became a battle of who loses concentration first, who shuts down their domain from too much damage first. Does Sukuna shut down his domain because he literally goes brain dead from an overload of information, or does Gojo shut down his domain first because he gets torn to literal pieces by Malevolent Shrine? That's how I thought they would interact. I didn't think there'd be any cancellation, because we know based on how Hollow Wicker Basket and Simple Domains work, it specifically targets the barrier. It's a big reason why Yuki's domain was torn right apart, because there's no barrier for the Simple Domain to target in order to negate it, like with Hollow Wicker Basket. And that's why Megumi's domain worked against Reggie, because once again, without a barrier, or at least a technical barrier, there was no sure hit effect for negation, I suppose. But this chapter establishes something very different, and I still think it's kind of hokey, like at least in the way that certain things were set up. But once again, we'll get to that when we get to that. And we see that people are wondering what exactly would clash, and no one exactly knows. And we see that the sure hit effect is imbued within the barrier itself, so only it can clash with another barrier. This is how it was established. Once again, I'm not crazy for thinking like this. Even the characters are like, okay, the sure hit relies on the barrier, but if there's no barrier to be relied on, what's going to clash if the barriers aren't clashing? And we see that the question really is, at least coming from Eno's, like, you guys are talking about their domains as if it's a given, but that stuff devours an insane amount of cursed energy, doesn't it? So shouldn't they avoid using it up thoughtlessly? And Inumaki comes in with the raw facts: fish flakes. And Yuta translates and is like, it's just as Inumaki-kun says, there's no limit to Gojo Sensei's cursed energy. And we see that Eno's like, well, yeah, but that's only because of how efficient he is. His cursed energy consumption ends up being less than what he naturally replenishes over time. But isn't that working under the assumption that he's using it like normal? If he starts using domain expansion over and over and over again consecutively, it'll probably be a different story. But I don't think so. Like, at least from how Yuta describes it, essentially Gojo's cursed energy usage is so close to zero that it doesn't even matter. Say Gojo has 100 points of cursed energy. He's using 0.0000000000000000000000000000001 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can't have a 10 or 1 0 of his cursed energy whenever he uses like purple or red or blue or anything like that. That's how efficient he is. So I don't think it necessarily matters. I think curse energy is not an issue. The main issue he would have is the whole technique disturbance coming out, or like difficult to use techniques after activating domain if he just starts spamming it. That's the only issue I could see him having, because without Infinity, without forcing Sukuna to use domain amplification, he's then gonna have to box bare knuckle brawl with Sukuna, and that's not gonna go off too well. At least I don't think. However, we do get to see that the natural question is, okay, Gojo's super efficient, he has the 6 eyes, he's not gonna run out of cursed energy, but what about Sukuna? Kashimo straight up says, he's unreal. The sharpness of his technique's activation, the way he can turn on a dime from using amplification to his innate technique. If Gojo Satoru didn't have the 6 eyes, Sukuna would likely be winning in terms of efficiency and utilizing cursed energy. So, Kashimo, once again, pure glazing. How he knows this, I have no clue. Like, I guess maybe he and Kenjaku had a real conversation about Sukuna before he ended up perishing at that battlefield when we saw in his flashback. I have no clue. It feels so weird that this is being mentioned by Kashimo of all people, because we know for a fact I don't think he knew who Sukuna was until, maybe he did know, because Sukuna was like an ancient curse, so maybe he did know about Sukuna. But like, the fact that he's like referencing Sukuna like this, maybe it's just because he can tell. He's probably just watching the fight and analyzing this, but still, the fact that Kashimo's been reduced to a glazer, bro, whatever. It'll all go in the Kashimo video. But with that being the case, we get another hefty statement that really itches that weird part of my scaling brain that really just makes me happy. Makes me want to click my heels. Makes me want to just slam the Yuta fan. No, I'm kidding. I have to slam myself, and I am not strong enough to slam myself. But with that being the case, we get a very interesting statement from Yuta Ogotsu. What's more, his total cursed energy is even more than mine. Going purely off intuition, I'd say by more than double. In other words, when it comes to these two, cursed energy is not the limiting factor for why they aren't expanding their domains. So, this is hefty. This is hefty, but simultaneously doesn't actually do much for us. Because here's the thing, right? Sukuna presumably at 20 fingers. I'm assuming he's just referring to 20 finger Sukuna right now. I'm not sure if they can tell that it's 20 finger. Like, I'm not sure if Gojo mentioned it. No, he didn't mention it. Like, he can't tell if it's 20 finger. But, like, I guess they would just assume that this is 20 finger. If it's 15 finger, this gets even crazier. If Yuta is thinking that this is 15 finger Sukuna fighting Gojo, then this gets even more buku bonkers. But let's be generous to Yuta and say 20 fingers. He says that Sukuna has more than double the amount of cursed energy that he does. More than double. Now, notably, this doesn't exactly qualify Rika as having less or more cursed energy than Sukuna, because you know Rika, at least the original Rika, boundless. It was literally described as a spirit with real boundless cursed energy. The new Rika, considering it's just mostly a storage unit, I'm not sure. Not really sure about that at all. But the fact that Yuta says that Sukuna has more than double his cursed energy, if you go with the idea, the general idea, I know this is a hotly contested topic on whether or not Sukuna's fingers just are cursed energy reserves, whether they hold techniques. Is 3 finger Sukuna as strong as 15 finger Sukuna? The only difference is something like whatever. But going with the most basic interpretation that every finger of Sukuna is the same percentage of his power, and it's just like, you have 20 fingers, each one has 5% of Sukuna. You just add fingers until you get to full 100% Sukuna. You're just going with that interpretation. That means that Yuta has less cursed energy than 10 fingers Sukuna. Then we know cursed energy means a lot in terms of like your bulk, your speed, all that. So Yuta really doesn't have a chance against 15 finger, like at all. Just throwing that out there. I'm still going to make the versus battle. I'm still going to actually do that. But still, nothing on that man. Golly, that's a statement I wasn't expecting. Like, that was not hinted at all in the spoilers. So that's crazy that that's just being, like, handed to us. So Yuta, the guy who's described by multiple people of having boundless cursed energy, is not even half of what Sukuna is. Not even half, because he says more than double. He doesn't say like more than triple. So we're gonna assume it's somewhere between 2.1 and like 2.9. So it's not 3 times Yuta's cursed energy. It's not that crazy, but still, Yuta Okkotsu, the guy who, outside of like Jackpot Akari and Rika herself, is the guy we know for a fact has the most cursed energy in the series. Like that's a little bit wild, like to really think about. And remember, Yuta has more cursed energy than Gojo. Like just verbatim, he has more cursed energy than Gojo, which means that Gojo is running at Sukuna with less than half of Sukuna's cursed energy. Gojo has less cursed energy. Once again, if you go by the fingers are just cursed energy, I know that's like every contentious argument, but like that means that Gojo's running around with like 9 fingers worth of cursed energy. Like he's literally Jogo. with Kenny being generous, he's literally Jogo level in terms of cursed energy. That's so weird to think about. I don't know. It feels so weird quantifying that. And Gojo's still holding that. Like, that is crazy. It's so weird to think. I know cursed energy doesn't do everything. Like, cursed energy total doesn't mean everything. But still, the fact that he has that much cursed energy and he's that efficient, bonkers for Sukuna. And we see that Momo's like, maybe it's not anything like that. Maybe not even them knows how exactly it's going to play out. If Gojo Satoru and Sukuna Ryomen's domains were to clash, who knows what would happen? And we see that Hikaruma's like, it's cool that all y'all theorizing like that. Like, I really like that we on anime theory right now. But here it comes. And they both activate domain expansion. Now, let me be completely real with you. It appears that Gojo activated his first, but he didn't activate it in the 0.2 second sense, which is a little bit... I mean, I agree with this. If Mahito could do a 0.2 second domain, Sukuna could definitely do a 0.2 second domain. So, that's fine. And notably, they both say it at the exact same time. So it's entirely possible, no matter how goofy this shot is. Like, I already kind of critiqued in the spoiler discussion, but I'll give the same critiques again. This just isn't Gege's best work. Like, I know. Let me preface this how I preface everything. Hi, my name is that guy with the pencil. I do the drawing. I don't think I could do better than this. I am nowhere near. You could take any author that publishes anything in any magazine. I don't care if it's once every 5 years. Looking at you, Togashi. But like, I legit don't care. Togashi, infinitely better artist than I am, but he literally just has fantastic art. So like that's not a real comparison. Like I'm trying to think of ugly manga art. One, you know the guy who like writes One Punch Man, his webcomic better than me. You want to know why? Because he could actually serialize publish it. Like that's something I could never do. I am nowhere near the level of any, and I mean any serialized artist in terms of my artistic skill, my determination, my swag. None of that. Not close. Just know this. When I say Gojo and Sukuna look super duper ugly here, and they look just weird. Like it just looks like a weird shot. Like notably, I double checked because someone brought up a good point. I went back to chapter 224 to see like what are the conditions. Like the main thing about this shot is that I'm wondering, where are they looking? like how are they looking? Why are they looking like this? Like they look like they're looking at opposite places of each other. Like they're looking at the camera. I get that. Once again, I'm saying this all the time in this review, but I get the meta reasoning why they're looking the way they are. Because it's cool to have the two characters look at the camera rather than look at each other. But inverse, what are they doing? And number two, it's just like, it's weird. Like and notably, this is a hard shot to do. Don't get me wrong. I forget what exactly it's called. I think it's like a 3/4 face shot where you show 3/4 of the face, like the ear, the cheek, and then like most of the eye and the side face. And you get like a tiny glimpse of the last face. It's either a 3/4 face or a 7/8 face. He does that for both of them here. And that's a very hard shot to do. So I get why it doesn't come out looking the best, but it does come out not looking the best, so it looks a little bit ugly. But I will admit, the hands are super duper good. Like I as an artist always struggle with hands to this very day. I need to just sit down and like draw a million hands. Like I know all the other people I know who can draw hands are like, yo, dude, I literally just sat there and just grinded out hands for like a week straight, and now I can do them half decently. So I know I need to just sit down and dedicate myself to that. But the hands look very, very good. But just the shots of their faces does not look the best. But Gojo opens domain alongside Sukuna. These both seem to open domain at the exact same time. And do I get into the stupidity, or at least not the... all right. We'll give it a second. We see them both open domain, and I love this shot. As much as I like clowned on the previous shot, in the spoiler discussion, I didn't give the next page its due diligence, its due credit. This spread of Sukuna standing on top of Malevolent Shrine and Gojo releasing Unlimited Void in this back shot of him with the pose and the infinity rushing out from behind him. Oh, it is gorgeous. It is gorgeous. This is one of my favorite. Like legitimately, I would put this on a wall. Like straight up, if I had the space, I would legit put this on a wall. This is a gorgeous panel by Gege. This excuses the previous panel because it just looks so good. And I'm not sure, did I just never notice it before? Did he always stand on Malevolent Shrine whenever he opened it? Like, maybe I just need to go and check. But, like, I feel like this is the first time we've seen Malevolent Shrine be, like, an actual building that he makes. Like, we've seen him use it a couple times. We always see the building, quote-unquote, spawn in. But I don't think he's like actively standing on it and interacting with it. I think when he used it against Maharaga and when he used it against the Finger Bearer, he wasn't actually standing on anything. But no, he actually posted up on his building, which looks super duper good. And we see that these two are in fact evenly matched. To quote the narrator, evenly matched, they form a pair within Gojo's barrier. The two sure hit guarantees overlap and cancel each other out. A battle with both sides expanding their domains. Should either one sustain immense damage causing the collapse of their domain, the other sure hit technique will immediately strike. So, here's the thing. Now, don't get me wrong. Maybe I'm just misunderstanding domains. And I'm going to leap back in time real quick and go back to the Gojo versus Jogo fight and double check what is said there. Okay, so I went back in time, all the way back to chapter 15 when domains were first introduced. And it is not said, I will admit, it is not said here that domains create a real separate space. At least not in this chapter. Maybe somewhere else it says it. I feel like I got that idea from somewhere in the manga, but who knows? I have no clue. Not a singular idea. But with that being the case, I guess what I thought would happen when these two interacted was what I said earlier. I thought, due to the nature of the open buried domain filling whatever space it's in up to the limit, it would fill up Gojo's barrier, and the two would simply have a clash of their respective sure hits against one another. The manga disagrees with me, though, and says that no matter what, these two cancel each other out. Interesting. But the main thing here is that it's established that evenly matched. For real, it can't be. Within the barrier, they are evenly matched. The effective range of Sukuna's domain is beyond the barrier of Gojo's domain. The barrier of a domain is weak against attacks from the outside. So Malevolent Shrine tears apart Gojo's domain. And we see the massive multi-mouth building just plop down onto the ground in the leveled area. Notably, that is interesting though. It appears that before the domain did shatter, or well, Gojo's barrier did shatter, a whole bunch of the area was already leveled by Malevolent Shrine. Very, very interesting. But obviously this leads to Gojo having his technique shut down, and thus he gets the first slash of presumably many, as long as his, I think Sukuna didn't shut down his domain. So as long as Sukuna's domain is still active, this first cut he gets right on the neck, seemingly on his jugular, is the first of many. But I feel a little cheated here. I don't think it should work like that. And I know y'all are like, oh, Pencil, you're a Gojo stan, so of course you don't think it should work like this. And you're absolutely correct. But here, let me explain why. I thought domains were separate spaces. That's what allowed the distance discrepancy, or the size discrepancy between domains and reality. Remember, Dagon's domain, whether it was like a true full island or not, was simply bigger, girthier, wider than what his barrier would have suggested. Like, it just is that way. Like, he had a whole bunch of water that was flowing around that was actual water that you could swim in, and you did have a whole section of island that you could be thrown into. Maki was thrown into the trees. That big old distance that she traveled in the one kick from Dagon should be bigger, and was bigger than the actual area they were fighting in where Dagon opened his domain. At least that's what it seemed like. Coffin of the Iron Mountain is an iron mountain with a coffin. So thusly, that thing is pretty darn big. That's where you usually get like mountain level stuff from JJK, because you can't get it from the meteor. That's like I believe that's a city level feat, and the earthquake feat from Gojo recently is country level. So there's that. But in reality, the idea of domains is I thought they were going to constitute a separate space. And thusly, even though Sukuna has an open barrier domain, I thought, like how Kenjaku's domain was limited to the confines of Tengen's outer shell, his domain area, and thusly the gravity technique didn't affect anything beyond that, and that's why when Tengen collapsed that barrier, the open barrier domain would simply fail, as it did with the battle against Kenjaku. Thusly, I figured that Sukuna's sure hit technique would be limited to Gojo's domain, because it's described as a void. How big the void is, I have no idea. Presumably, it's bigger than at least 200 meters, which is the stated range of Sukuna's technique. But it isn't. Sukuna's technique transcends Gojo's domain. I feel like that kind of contradicts the separate space argument. I don't know. It feels very, very weird. Like, I'm not sure if this like indirectly debunks any sort of like mountain level stuff for JJK, because a mountain's bigger than 200 meters, and so is an island. So like, I have no idea. This feels super duper weird. It feels a little contrived. I feel like it shouldn't work like this. I feel like the barrier should be limited to how far the barrier reaches within a separate space. But if I can't find that panel, or wherever I got the idea that domains are a separate space, then this is valid, I guess. Because we know, the thing is, the one thing that goes against the separate space idea previously was the idea that Hikari could move his domain coordinates from within the domain, which implies that even though they're in a separate space that does not exist congruent with the real reality, the outer reality in the shell that is existing in the outer reality still can be affected by things that are happening inside the shell. So, I don't know. It's weird. But regardless, Gojo does lose the domain battle, and he does get clashed. Well, no, technically, ironically, if he doesn't lose the domain battle, it's just his shell gets destroyed. The two were evenly matched in terms of domain, it's just that Gojo's barrier wasn't big enough. And thusly, we see Gojo get his neck sliced. Now, earlier I mentioned how Gojo was kind of dumb for opening his domain counter to Sukuna's. And here's why, right? Like, even if I went with the idea that I presented, where I thought, oh, these two would just clash, and then thusly probably would be forced to fight within the barrier shell. At least that's what I thought was going to happen. Even still, you don't want to do that, buddy, because then you're consistently maintaining a barrier domain, and rather, you should have waited until Sukuna opened his domain and just left. Straight gone. Like, leave the area, vacate the premises. Like, whether that involves opening simple domain and then just clapping out of there, or just clapping out of there. There's no reason to actively engage with Sukuna's domain because it was open barrier. Now, the main issue with this is that it seems like no one told anybody this. Like, at least by all the reactions earlier on in the chapter, Gojo may have just not known that Sukuna had an open barrier domain, which, if so, seems really stupid. Like, you think that would be the first thing that gets mentioned? But here's the thing, that's how you make it excusable. You just say Gojo didn't know. How the Six Eyes didn't tell him that, I have no idea. But regardless, you just go with that. The idea that maybe Gojo didn't know. But the reason I say it's stupid is I'm assuming Gojo did know. I presume that Inumaki and Itadori probably told him, if not the Six Eyes themselves telling him that. So what made him think opening his domain was a good idea? Like, what made him think fighting the domain with his own domain was a good idea? And at best, here's the thing, at best, his domain would be neutralized. Both him and Sukuna's domain would be neutralized, and he'll have to box Sukuna hand to hand. But would that? I'm not sure if that would work though. Like, I don't think so. I think they would just both be amped. They'd both be amped. But at best, he would have to fight an amped Sukuna within the domain, which would kind of just continue their battle from that point on, which may work. But at worst, this happens. The best, and I mean the best option here, is wait for Sukuna to open his domain. His domain is open barriered. Leave. Just leave. Leave and come back. Like, obviously, I would say something different if we know Gojo was actually concerned with fighting Sukuna fairly. But no, 2 chapters ago, he straight up hid his 200% amped hollow purple away within a barrier so Sukuna would be off guarded. Obviously, Gojo does not care about fighting fair. So why not just leave? Because then the moment you come back with Sukuna's technique shut down, all you need to do is bully that man. Just bully him straight after that, because he wouldn't be able to domain amplification. Like, I just think this was dumb. And here's the thing. If you wanted to open domain, wait until he already spent his domain so his technique is shut down, and then you open domain on him. And then you win. Like, that's the thing. If Sukuna was... I can understand Sukuna not playing around, or not playing around. I can understand Sukuna playing around. He really has nothing to lose in terms of this battle. He knows he has a superior domain. He knows he's like that. But Gojo, dog, why would you even play like this? Because now next chapter really depends. If Sukuna holds open the domain, I don't see how Gojo gets out of this. Like, presumably, maybe, just because of how it's stated in the Sendai chapter by the narrator, that one's curse technique becomes hard to use but not impossible, it's wholeheartedly possible that Gojo can still just teleport out of there. I think that's the best case scenario for what happens. Gojo just teleports out of there and is like, whoa, ooh, I need to RCT that real quick. That is the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, because we know that the infinity gets shut off after he uses his domain. We saw that after his domain battle with Jogo, where he dominated Jogo, he was able to be affected by Hanami's curse technique because his infinity was shut down. Then if he really is just done, then Gojo may be done. The only reason I don't think that's the case, the only reason I still have faith in Gojo, is because the fight's been 3 chapters long, if that. Like, the fight really started last chapter. So I do think there's still more in the bag. Sukuna hasn't pulled out any of the 10 shadows. I still don't think we've seen all of Gojo's bag. We still have not seen a maximum. And as much as Gege doesn't like Gojo, don't get me wrong, I feel like this whole situation was contrived. Gojo being stupid, the way the domains interacting, changing, all that. I feel like this is just Gege loading and firing off on Gojo because he doesn't like him. But regardless of that, I think the fight isn't over. I still got faith in Gojo. And remember the last time that Gojo got put in a life or death scenario. He went from like high grade 1 to the strongest in the verse. High grade 1 to the strongest in the verse at the time. And he was the strongest. And he is the strongest. So I still have faith. However, that's what I think. Please, what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you think the battle's over? Do you think the heavy hitters are going to have to step in now? Do you think they'll all get washed immediately? Because that's what I think. Please let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure the notifications bell so you miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below. Each for as low as $1 a month. Get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. Also, now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, thank you guys so much once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Nago the Pencil, writing off.